Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We are so excited to have you here and to be getting ready for our Peaceful Futures Reveal Party. Zahra, I'm sorry, I didn't know that was you. You were on a computer that said something else. So I'm glad to see you, especially. We are going to give folks a few minutes, and I will, in the meantime, give you all a little bit of introduction about Peaceful Families Project in general, and very specifically the Peaceful Futures curriculum. As many of you know, Peaceful Families Project has over a 20-year history, over a 20-year history in some form or another, working with the promotion of positive family functioning with using focused on and based on Islamic models of family relationships, and really has the goal of the elimination of domestic violence within Muslim communities, both here in the United States and of course globally. We are very honored to be sort of the newest generation of a long line of founders and collaborators who have made all of our work possible. Peaceful Families works in the realm of training, resource development, research, and what we call affiliated partnerships, bringing a voice to the Muslim experience of domestic violence in the United States. And we do that with a whole variety of partners. Peaceful Futures is a very specific collaboration which came from over 3 years of working together with a variety of faith partners, and also a huge variety of professionals within our own community who have collaborated to make this a success. And I see Sister Selma on here. We have Sister Amina, Sister Hasna, so many people who collaborated and contributed, as well as the folks who are going to be with us today, Zahra Dahani, Jasmine, who was not able to be with us, and then myself as well. I'm keeping my eye on participants to make sure that I am getting everybody in who is waiting. So that's why I am looking sort of around and as we go. So we're very, very excited to have tonight be our reveal party for this curriculum that so many people have waited for so long. And we want to talk about sort of why do we have a curriculum for Islamic healthy relationships for young people? One of the things that we know through our work with Peaceful Families is that domestic violence does not start when individuals are getting ready to marry. The seeds of healthy relationship, the seeds of what we expect in a marriage, the seeds of what we understand as our role as Muslims in the relational world starts really from much younger, starts from childhood, from your own experiences within your households. But it especially becomes focused around the age, of course, of middle school, high school, and university age, when adults, when becoming adults, when developing adults begin to look at themselves as partners, as people who are creating relationships. And this is really the place where we can make a positive kind of influence, where we can do education about what is it that Islam says? What are we building? What are we looking for in partnerships? What are the skills to make partnerships healthy? What about mental health and challenges with addiction? Our whole new world of cyber citizenship, how does that fit into the relational world or our lives as Muslims? And then, of course, celebrating the diversity within our Islamic tradition, but also how to build tolerance for those who really do not believe or act in the same way that we do. Part of the difficulty, especially for young people living in the United States, is that they are really absorbed with a world that is not Muslim in perspective. So they are talking about relationships. They are talking about expectations in school, with their, sports teams, with, their Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, with on social media, on television, but that they may not be getting what is called, of course, an Islamic perspective. They may not be getting the perspective we want. At the same time, we know that many times Muslim parents don't always feel comfortable. And what Islamic teaching or Islamic identity starts to begin to sound like is a list of don't date, don't drink, don't experiment with any kind of drugs, don't mix with these kind of people, don't. But we are not always at the same time giving our young people the idea of what should you be doing? What do Muslims do in the world other than the things that they don't do? So it's very important for us to be able to give this opportunity for young folks to be able to hear from a Muslim perspective all of the do's. So what should we be doing? What should we be looking for? What is our role in a world that is not Muslim majority for most of our young people? We knew that this curriculum was important, but as we've been working with young people in terms of, collaborating and demonstrating what we're doing, what I've really been touched by is the folks younger than me, who are just so absolutely grateful that this exists, and have told us, I only wish that this had been around when I was getting a little bit older, because it's something that my parents did not feel comfortable talking about. There are so many things that I missed, that I didn't understand sort of in the world. So we know that this is something that the curriculum is something that is really important. I'll explain a teeny bit about how the curriculum is going to work and sort of what our, inshallah, goals are. What are the goals coming up for Peaceful Futures? So Peaceful Futures, as I said, has 3 separate curriculum sets. We have a set for middle school, a set for high school, and a set for university age or individuals, youth. And you're going to be getting a taste, you're going to be getting a sampler of both the middle school and a university age activity from the curriculum. We are missing our high school trainer. We are asking for dua. She's not feeling well. So you're missing high school, but you're getting middle school and university age, which will kind of cover the scope of what we're doing. What the plan is now that the curriculum is done, and the curriculum, as I said, consists of 8, a manual for the whole project, 8 sessions for each age group, and the sessions include a PowerPoint, links, resources, activities, all sorts of things that a leader might need to really pull this program off. In addition, I'm just keeping my eye on the participant list at the same time. Let me actually get that off because we don't want to be sharing other people's information. We do have middle school and high school. I'm confusing my trainers. University age trainer is the one who's not here. We are working with trainers across the country. So we are doing a pilot. The idea is to do a pilot program. Our hope is to have, inshallah, 2 trainers from 10 different groups across the country to come in probably around the month of February, when we're looking at a long weekend that educators tend to have off, because we assume that most of these folks are going to be educators. And these folks, we've had interest from Islamic schools, Islamic youth groups, from a variety of folks, even internationally. There are some folks interested in Germany. There are folks from Canada who are very keen to get the training. What we don't want is, because we know that the curriculum is sometimes touching on delicate points within our community, we want to make sure that the trainers are well trained. So this is not a curriculum that we want to give out and to sort of distribute widely without having some deep training on how to work work with parents, how to work with communities, what to do if young people disclose information that is, relates to child abuse or things like that. So we really want to have trainers have a deep training. So we will be doing training of trainers, inshallah, in February. And then we are moving toward the spring to have the first sets of Peaceful Futures groups running. And then we will be doing, as we always do, some database, some evidence-based research in terms of making sure that the curriculum is appropriate, that it is doing what it is supposed to do, that it is that there's satisfaction within the communities and with parents and with children, really looking at impact in terms of the individual child, the family, and the community. So we will be doing all of these kinds of things, hopefully February, March, April, and May, and then June we'll begin to sort of open the curriculum to other folks who might be interested, always with the idea that there would be training involved. So I want to get started, and I will be doing a little bit. I'm going to run through one of the first sessions, but we're not going to do all the activities. For the middle school, I had the honor of sort of pulling together the last bits and pieces of the middle school curriculum that was built on the work of everyone who came before us, and we are so grateful for the opportunity to sort of finish, to cast off, to be able to finish off this amazing project. So I will go through, inshallah, a little bit of the first session for middle school folks. Zahra will be doing a lesson from high school, and then we'll open it up a little bit for questions if those are around. We have a smaller audience today, but we are also, of course, recording this for the larger audience. There were more people signed up, and I know that there's a variety of things happening in the universe that have gotten in the way of people following through with their best intentions. And I'm going to do this somewhat like I would be doing it with kids, but because we have a couple of youth in here, but not all youth, I will also be talking to grown-ups simultaneously so that we can get an idea of sort of how the program will actually run. So, of course, Peaceful Future is a program where we get to learn about ourselves, our faith, and our world with other Muslims of our same age, of our peer group, with some assistance from adults. Peaceful Futures is a program by Peaceful Families that is sponsored by Peaceful Families Project, and Peaceful Families, of course, is a national organization that teaches Islamic models, has resources and research regarding Islamic models of positive family functioning and domestic violence. Peaceful Futures is a place where you can learn, share, question, and voice your own opinions to better understand yourself, your world, and your relationships. We're not going to do icebreakers, although that would be so interesting with this group, but we don't have enough time to do all the activities. We're going to do one of the activities. We do want, of course, with each session, remind folks about the rules of sharing with each other, especially with young people. We really want to model, and this is part of modeling positive relationships, is how do we work together? How do we get things done? Of course, first of all, what gets said in the room stays in the room. We want to respect privacy of others. We want to have confidentiality, because otherwise we will not have good conversations. We will not be able to really delve deeply into the information that we are talking about. The right to pass. So the idea is, while we want participation, we want everyone to have a voice, we also don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. We don't want to push people to talk beyond what they feel that they can. We really want to be able to make the experience as positive as possible. And because of that, we are not going to force people to speak. we ask people to step up and step back. And again, this is amazing modeling for conversations in the real world. So when you step up to speak, we want you to give your full opinion. We want you to have the chance to express. And when you're done, we want you to step back so that other people can join the conversation, so that other people have a place and a space also to share their voice. We want to be careful of ouch and oops. So if we say something that someone has said hurt them or has made them upset, we want to own it. We don't want to say, no, that's not what I meant. We don't want to minimalize it. We don't want to, even if we don't understand why it was upsetting to them, we want to own it. We want to, say, that was my opinion. I'm sorry I said it in that way. I'm sorry that it was something that hurt you, and to go forward from there. We want to apologize when we hurt other people's feelings, even if it's unintentional. We don't want a sort of confidentiality getting trumped by safety, which means all of the kids will know, and all of the parents will know, and all the communities will know that when a child discloses something that is in fact abuse, that we as professionals have the obligation to get that to somewhere that will report. So kids will know in the beginning, we have confidentiality. We are not going to say anything about anything. However, if there is something that shows that you are being abused, or that you are a harm to or that you may be in danger to yourself or others, then we may need to take other steps. And so we're going to talk about that throughout the sessions. And then, of course, no judgment, that we all have differing beliefs and values. No judgment is going to come from us as leaders, and no judgment should be coming from participants to each other, that we are here to listen and understand us as going with what our curriculum states, which is learning how to manage diversity and having tolerance for those who believe and think differently than we do. We are looking at what is Islam, and I'll give this caveat to the parents, which is, and we'll talk a little bit about how the world is looking at Islam in these days, and what our young people who did not maybe grow up in Muslim majority countries, what they are getting bombarded with in terms of what Islam is. So one of the things that we have to do, and we've talked about this in Peaceful Families as well, is the answer, the resolution is not in moving away from our deen. The resolution around positive family functioning and the elimination of domestic violence is getting closer to our deen. Right? So one of the things that we want to do with young people is get them excited about and understanding what Islam really is. So we, of course, are going through what Islam is. Islam is made up of two words, meaning I'm going to turn you guys off so I can see for a minute, meaning of three root words in Arabic, salama, and that means peace, submission, and obedience. A Muslim is the one who submits, of course, to the will of Allah. What makes us Muslim? And this is something that, of course, is universal, despite our differences in language and culture and all of those other kinds of things. There are two basic pieces of Islamness, two things that we cannot question. So one is the Quran being the word of Allah, which is sent to us to teach us how to be Muslim. It is our primary source of knowledge for determining right and wrong in values, worship, habits, and rules for our everyday life. And of course, then we have the Sunnah. The Sunnah is the way of life that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, lived. He is our best example of what a good Muslim should be. Hadith are records of the history of the Prophet, peace be upon him, his habits, his sayings, that serve as models for us. The Hadith were written by the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon them, and then validated by Islamic scholars. Sometimes we know that the non-Muslim world, sometimes the Muslim world, but certainly sometimes the non-Muslim world does not get what Islam is all about. So when you Google the word Muslim or you Google the word Islam, these are some of the images that you might see. This, or this. And we really want to get an idea of how does it feel when you see those images together with what you believe is the representation of your faith. What does that represent compared to your family's experience? Do those things look comforting to you? Do they look like who you are? Do those things look very different from who you are? How do you think non-Muslims feel about Muslims when they see those images? What do you think that causes within the outside community? And then what are some better ways do you imagine that Islam can be represented? If those people, if those pictures, if those representations are not Islam, then what is Islam? What are we? What are we? Who are we? Islam is not only the 5 pillars, and our kids are pretty good about knowing what those 5 pillars are, but what are the core values? What is Islam? What does Islam stand for? And we know that there are core values that are repeated over and over and over again in the Quran and the Hadith. And those are justice, mercy, equality, respect, and free will. And then we are going through, I'm not going to go through all of them with you all, but the idea of justice, what does that look like? What does the Quran say? What do the Hadith say? Mercy and compassion, what does that mean? What does the Quran say? What does the Hadith say? Equality, what does that look like in Islam? And we know that we are judged only by our taqwa. All genders, all races, all wealth categories, all education levels, all cultures, all countries, and all languages. And what does the Quran have to say about that? And again, because this is a sample, an appetizer, and not the whole curriculum, I'm going to go through quickly. Respect for others. And then, of course, the freedom of thought and will and accountability. And what does the Quran say about this? And then the activity that we are looking at is, so New York City has initiated a campaign for people to state their beliefs and have their words to be printed on the side of the bus. If you had to make a statement about Islam and relationships on the side of a bus, what would it be? No more than 2 sentences and no more than 20 words. Okay, so that gives you an idea of what this actually would look like in the real world. And of course, each of those would be a discussion. It would not be as quick as I zoomed you through them. It would be a discussion, and then we would make posters or make an interactive video around what is Islam for me, doing Islamic PSAs for the kids. For those of you who have not seen on our website, we do have Youth Speaks, which is a program looking at different questions about Muslim identity and Muslim beliefs and Muslim experiences around positive family functioning, where we have young people contributing their own beliefs within their own words. And I want to pass it over to Zahra. Actually, I'm going to not only pass it over to you, but I'm going to make you a co-host so that you can share whatever information that you have as well. Let me pull up more co-host. There you go. I will pass it off to Zahra, who is one of our amazing, not only trainers, but contributors to the curriculum as well.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, everyone. So like Denise said, my name is Zahra Rahman, and I am one of the trainers at Peaceful Families. I'm also a high school teacher, so making this curriculum and working on this is very near and dear to my heart. So just like Denise said, I'm going to give you a little bit of a taster of one of the lessons on our curriculum. And it focuses on Islam and mental health and addictions. Again, when we get to high school level, we have a little bit of, the harder conversations we're able to have with the kids because they are going to be adults soon. They're going to be going into the world. They're going to be working with different types of people. And when they're in high school, there are things that they're exposed to that also should be addressed within our community. So just again, just like a quick thing, what we're going to try to do with the high school curriculum is really just give them an overview of what their day is going to look like. I think what I've learned as a teacher as well is it's important to give clear expectations to the kids so that they know what things are going to be hit on. What we're going to focus on today is I'll just go through a little bit of the lessons on mental health, touch a little bit on what Islamic values tie together mental health, and then really just like overview different types of mental health things that teenagers go through as well that they might feel towards. And then we'll go into a little bit of an empathy workout, which I will explain to you what that is when we get to it. So again, very similar to what Denise did with the middle school level. I have a lot more group norms than the middle school because high schoolers like to test you. So I think in general, just like treat each other with dignity and respect. No judgment if somebody feels open enough to share something that is important. And so no judgment should stand there. Be genuine with each other about ideas, challenges, and feelings. Confidentiality, again, anything that stays in the room is going to, anything said in the room is going to stay there. Listen is all capitalized because a lot of times we want to speak or talk or respond rather than listen. So I think that's really important to just have that sort of concept. Being open-minded, right? We all have different experiences in our life and we should be open-minded and empathetic towards others. Don't be defensive with your, I just say colleagues because in terms of like when you're talking about different things, you want to make sure that like the kids understand that these are the people that they're going to be around, they're going to work with eventually. And so just like their peers or colleagues, and then give people the benefit of the doubt. It's okay not to know the right answer and to admit it. I think we all want to be right about things, but we are more than half of the time wrong about things. Having humility in that. And then if you commit to doing something, do it, right? So if they commit to doing their homework, right, do it, which we'll give them for their assignments. So just an introduction to the mental health realm. This is what we would ask, just like general questions to the students, just to see where they're at, you know, like it's always important to meet kids where they are. And so when you kind of start off with overarching vague questions, you can see where the trace of the class is going to go. And then we kind of like give the purpose and the aims of the day, talk about misconceptions, talk about how this lesson is going to focus on mental health and how different people view it, and how as a Muslim community can we be empathetic and help those that are struggling with different mental health illnesses and challenges. Again, in the same sort of realm of we're all in different places, we also have different experiences. So I think it's really important to offer space to kids as well, that if they feel triggered by anything, if we're talking about depression, if they are dealing with addiction in the home, or if they know people that suffer from addiction, that those feelings can trigger things, and that might cause a lot of anxiety and, you know, just uncomfortable feeling. And so you don't want any child to feel uncomfortable in the space. So I usually like lead with this, that if you feel triggered by anything, first acknowledge that, let us know. I said mute the webinar here because I don't know, God knows where COVID is going, but hopefully, inshallah, we're in a physical space. But if they need to step out of the room, they're definitely there. And then grounding exercises, I always have like little stress balls and stuff that they can play with and stuff, which I think is also important to note when we inshallah do this. So generally, focusing on what mental health is, it's our emotional, psychological, and social well-being, which is a very umbrella term that deals with a lot of different things. I think people view mental health as something that is only when something's wrong with someone, but we all have mental health. Our brain is a muscle, and in our muscle, we have a lot of chemicals that work in there, and we all have that health that goes along with it. Just like we need to keep our bodies healthy, we need to keep our muscles healthy, we need to go for that walk even when we don't feel like doing it. We have to do exercises with our brain in order to refine our mental health as well. I will go through like depression and, kind of give an overarching vague question to kids that like what symptoms depression, do media portray things, because there's a lot of social media things, and then what do our Muslim community members say about things. There's definitely a lot of different viewpoints within the Muslim community, and it's really important to address those different viewpoints when you're working with kids, in order to get through the misconceptions. Same thing with anxiety. I touch on depression and anxiety because they're like overarching things that teenagers statistically go through the most. I go through trauma and complicated grief a little bit and talk about how like losing something or someone turns into grief and how that can be traumatic. And then I'm a science teacher, so I have to talk about the science behind things. And sometimes that really clicks with someone. So I talk about trauma's impact on the brain, how we like have typical development, and then what happens with developmental trauma. And then we talk about substance use disorder and addiction, and like how addiction isn't only with substances, it can be with behaviors. It can be with being on your phone all the time, checking Instagram all the time. All of those like people's viewpoints on you is an addiction as well, if you're completely seeking validation, which is something that we see with this generation a lot. And then we kind of go through addiction in the brain and talk about the science again, and how there's actual pathways that cause addiction. And so there's nothing wrong with you in general if there's like you have an addiction, because I think it can be a very isolating fear that like I have addiction and all of this stuff, but there's specific pathways in our brains that actually cause this. So our brain is a very tricky thing. And so I think for kids to know this, because they'll constantly take it personally that like there's something wrong with me, but there's nothing wrong with them. And that's something that like needs to be validated. And then we talk about like misconceptions in Islam, right? That like if you are going through a mental health struggle, you're categorized as non-religious or not religious enough. You're not praying enough. You're oversimplifying a lot of the medical conditions that mental health has to go through, and things that Islam in general tells us to be aware of our mental health and our mind and the way that we perceive and walk through the world. And so we kind of go through misconceptions, and then like I'll probably ask like the kids, like what other things that do you have, and like we'll have a little back and forth. And then I get into like the Islam and mental health, which I'm not going to go through all of this because this is like a lot of very, very nitty gritty things. But even in terms of like talking about nafs and talking about like the 3 states of our being or understanding ourselves, they're very, very laid out in Islam. They're very laid out in the Quran. They're very laid out in the Hadith. And the Prophet ﷺ used to talk about them all the time in terms of like how we ourselves have these different nafs that make sure that like together they're working in harmony. But if one is overpowering the other, that's where the mental health comes in, right? So if your commanding self is being too critical, you're going to have a lot of anxiety about the future because it's being too critical of where you are. The accusatory self is going to be critical about your past. And that's where depression comes in, because you're fixated on the past. So all of those things we're going to talk about with the kids. And the same thing, kind of like gaining awareness into your psychological being and your mind actually helps your spiritual functioning, and like actually impacts the way that you develop a meaningful relationship with Allah. And that's like the main sort of takeaway that the kids are going to get from talking about mental health. And then this is where we get into the first activity, which is I really believe in restorative practices. It's kind of like healing different relationships in one place by having a conversation. I'm trained in this, so I really believe in the impact that it can make. And so they're called empathy workouts, right? Empathy is a specific part of our brain. If we don't work it out, it's not going to work because it's not being used. And so this is a clip from a movie that I think laid out the way that a father-son relationship can be impacted by mental health and addiction. And so I would play this and kind of show the kids that like this is a conversation that a father-son relationship is having. And we're going to focus on these three pieces of information and these three questions. So looking at the perspectives of both of them, not just the father, but the actual person who's going through the addiction. And then addiction affects someone's brain. So putting yourself in his shoes, why do you think he's not hearing his father, right? So that's where the empathy part comes out. And how would this experience affect his father's mental health? His father has mental health, and so does the son, right? They both have mental health, and that's why they're not hearing each other. Denise, I don't know if you want me to play this. Do you want me to play this? Okay. So I'll play this clip. I don't think it's that long. And I know we're recording this as well, but if you're watching this as a recording, like really think about these three questions and think about how this is portrayed. So hopefully this works.
Doesn't change at all. It's okay, so how you doing? I'm doing great. I'm just doing what needs to be done. What does that mean? Just being responsible for myself and I've quit on my own, so I got 5 days now. I feel like I'm doing well, but I just need a few $100, so. Nick, I can't give you any money. Yeah. I'll bet. It's just $200. I just need I think it's just good. I want to go to New York. New York? Yeah. I need to get out of San Francisco. It's too many. All these fun bad vibes here all the time.
So I'm not going to finish the whole clip, but even like in terms of like their dynamic and the way that their body language is, we would kind of unpack that. And then we would go through the different sort of things, and they would have note catchers within their worksheets. And so what I would do in real time is either write it down or type it up. And this is all student voice. So it's all what the kids are coming up with. And then afterwards, we would kind of form it back into kind of like Islam and like what it says, and how if this was like a Muslim dynamic, what would that look like? And how could we react and be empathetic towards someone who is going through that addiction? And then this is where we're going to stop, but because it's a heavy topic, I believe in brain breaks. And so it's either like I'll play a game with them or I'll let them stretch or like have snacks or something. And so it's really important to decompress from like what you've seen and what you've heard of, because all of this is very heavy and but it's very important, but it's important to give your brain a break as well. So that's just a little taste of what that would look like.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We now are open for questions or comments. I do apologize. So the version of mine that you saw looked different than the version that Zahra has, and that was just because I pulled up an older file, which is why there might have been some little it just looks differently formatted than the one that Zahra has. They are all now formatted in the same sort of standardized way. So are there questions, comments about what you saw or heard in terms of Peaceful Futures? And I believe you guys are able to unmute yourselves if you have questions or concerns. Or comments, not concerns. Yeah, I have my teacher hat on. Questions or concerns, questions or comments for sure.
Assalamu alaikum. This is super exciting. I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about when this would be fully accessible to people and how people can access it?
Absolutely. So what we talked about is right now it is all together, but we really feel that for so many reasons that, as you can see, a lot of the information is heavy and will definitely take training. So we are not going to sort of distribute this the way that we have distributed other kinds of curriculums, that really we are going to focus on training. And then once people get the training, they have access to the materials, to all 3 sets of the materials. The first training of trainers should be held in February of 2022. We, inshallah, that this will be an in-person training, because so much of working with youth and that very delicate balance of parent, community, and youth is really about communication skills, about that balance, about also knowing what the boundaries are in terms of working with youth. So the first training of trainers, which will be for approximately 20 individuals, 10 sets of 2, and hopefully half male, half female, because we'd like each team to be 1 male or 1 female. The sessions are not split up per se, but we really think it's important, again, to see modeling between male and female trainers, how they work together, but also so that every child will feel like they have somebody that looks like them and talks like them in the room. So the first set of the first training of trainers will be in February, inshallah. And then from there, each group, because they will represent 10 different organizations around the United States and maybe Canada. And then they will go out and actually do the first group, which will be about 10 kids in each group. So we're hoping for about 100 kids in that first group. Once they are done and we sort of crunched up the data, we will look then toward the beginning. Again, we're trying to go with education calendars. So probably sometime in July and August for another set of trainers who are not involved in the pilot to be trained and to utilize. Okay. Well, we are very, very thankful, very, very thankful for your presence. Any last questions, concerns, comments? We are very, very excited. This really has been a project that has taken a little while, and I'm sort of glad that it took a little while, because it's such important information. It's such rich content, and it's such a high need within our community. It is, despite attendance at this particular event, it is also one of the programs where we have had the most amount of interest and questioning, and people very enthusiastic around really what we can do for youth. We're all very aware that relationship, it's interesting to me when I think about, even as a mom of a teen, how much time and angst we spend on SAT preparation and driver's license preparation and college preparation and all of this preparation, wanting to send our children out into the world with the best roots that they have, with the highest amount of skills. And we don't talk about relationship building. We don't talk about what kind of family life we imagine them to have, right? Kids are getting, especially Muslim parents, because we have this terror of they're going to date or they're going to want to explore or something, terrible is going to happen. So they get a very, very narrow in the thing that is probably the most important, right? The area of life where they are most at risk. Is interpersonal relationships, is, that place that is supposed to be a sanctuary, their home. And we are not giving them a lot of information about how does that work? How does that start? So I think this is, and even, the information they get is so skewed. We want, you have to marry a Muslim, you have to marry somebody who's highly educated, you have to marry somebody who's got, this kind of salary, or from this language group or from this cultural group, and very little about character, about what you should look for, about the warning signs early in relationships, about what you do with cyber relationships, because we do know that this is a very an area of so much fragility within our children and within our communities, that really this is, you know, all of the money and time and anxiety, I'll speak for myself, Anna, spend on preparing our children for adulthood. There is no more important curriculum than this one, not because we did it, but because it's bringing up the things that really young people need to have positive, helpful, peaceful futures, really peaceful futures. So we are very excited, honored, and of course, you know, feel the weight of that responsibility at the same time. We are excited for partners, so there will be information coming out about how to sign up. And we hope that all of you have peace in your futures as well as peace in your families. And we will see you at another one of our events for Domestic Violence Month.
I think before we end, Denise, there's a question in the chat.
Okay. Go ahead. Let me pull it up.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, we couldn't hear you. I saw your mic go unmuted, but it says, how will we be contacted about the training?
Okay, so hopefully, inshallah, you are following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, as well as subscribe to the Peaceful Families newsletter. Though there will be an information form. What we're asking for is that each of the leaders, that you come in pairs. It would be really helpful if that was one female and one male pair, and that each of the people who sign up, at least for this pilot program, are working with a youth organization, either with a masjid, an Islamic school, an Islamic youth group, a mainstream school who has an MSA, in whatever way, because we want to make sure that our first sets of trainers are out and working. So during that time, you will come in, inshallah, for the training of trainers, which should be a 2-day event. We will have you that we will then sort of also walk you through the first set of the 8 sessions that you do, depending on the age group that you pick. We will be doing monthly check-ins for the trainers once they are out in the world, because again, we want to have conversations. What do you do when a kid says this, or has this come up for you, or they really misinterpreted that, those kinds of things, so that folks get support. And then you'll be, you know, once you're done that first session, you'll be out in the world and you can do as many sessions as you would like. Okay, so inshallah, you'll be seeing those that information coming out. If you want to invite someone, just let them know. First of all, have them send us have them go on this webinar will be on our webpage, and then have them reach out to the info at Peaceful Families. And then there will be very soon a registration form for interest specifically about peaceful futures. Okay. Thank you so much. Salam, peace to everyone. Have a great evening. We thank you so much for your interest. Ma salam.